And we'll go live. We're close enough on time. So you ready?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Well, good evening. This is Jim Morgan. I'm with the Fishers Historical Society, and we do a once a month Fishers History Chat. Now, John Baldwin is here with us today with this little tiny little museum in Carmel, but it is the only military museum in the county of Hamilton County. So that would include Fishers and what have you. And if you've driven up and down College, you have seen this little museum, and you've probably gone, "What is that?" So anyway, John, tell us a little bit about this museum that I guess you could say, found.
Yes. Actually, the museum's been around for a number of years, but yeah, thank you. As a matter of fact, I keep Vistaprint in business with business cards, and the second go around, I started putting a picture of the sign out the front of the building, and it turns out to be a two-part conversation. I show the sign rather than my contact information first. So, oh, I know where you guys are. I've been by there many times. And then they look at me and they say, but you're never open.
Exactly. That's what I always. Stop by. I don't know how many times, and then I
Right,
finally found the
exactly.
trustee's phone number, and that's how I found you.
I know, and believe me, I appreciate that. Thank you for your friendship and for bringing us on tonight. This is the second time Jim's been kind enough to have us on. It was last April, if my recollection is correct. So we've had some changes, but to answer your initial question, there were two Korean War veterans. Marvin Pike and Jack Edwards, who were part of a group of veterans there in the home place area of Carmel. And they had collecting memorabilia. Several were Civil War buffs. Marvin himself was. He's donated to museums in the central part of the state with those kind of things. So anyway, um, sometime as the deputy trustee for Clay Township, the building which we're in became available to them. And for those who don't know much about the area, it's a little one-story single-family house was built in 1950, but it had been owned by the township for a number of years. And at one point, it served as their offices while the present government center and the Carmel Fire Station, which is co-located with it, were built in that area. So they opened this up as a lending library for local students primarily back in 1997. So it actually dates back to then. Unfortunately, they both passed away within about 10 years. And they had a once a month discussion group called the Warriors Discussion Group. Actually, a number of people know the whole lash up more by that I found than the museum itself. They did have enough volunteers at a time to be open at least once or twice a week from paperwork we found. And however, by about 2013, they just couldn't keep it going. A number of them had passed away at that point. They had an amateur historian, Chuck Bowman, who was a well-known veteran in the area. He was not able to keep it going, and most of them passed away by now. However, the Greater Home Place Neighborhood Association had met in that building even before these guys started the museum, and they'd hold monthly meetings in there. Well, for whatever reason, the township kept the building, kept the lights on. Their staff occasionally used it for some things, and then Home Place Neighborhood Association kept meeting there. But they were watching this stuff that has stayed in the same places on the walls ever since 2013, and nobody was able to come forward and do anything about it. Doug Callahan, who was a previous trustee, had made a comment to us. He said, I just can't get even a single veteran, let alone one of the veterans' posts in the area, just to come in and pay some regular attention to it, let alone, I'll say, revitalize it. So 2 years ago plus, we started talking about it. And sometime before the county had their bicentennial. And the Carmel area, Plain Township, celebrated that in November of that year. We were open then. We had a number of veterans come in and just talk about what was there. And it was a very good meeting with a number of people that came in, including surprises like, you guys are open? Well,
Yeah.
yes, for now. Come on back. So anyway, so we formed our not-for-profit to revitalize what really became a time capsule. And the what we had found was, and I'm more than willing to change my description, it's the only public military museum in Hamilton County. Still appears to be. There are some displays in the museum in Noblesville and some in the museum in Sheridan. We'll give them credit, and they've been there for quite a while, but nothing like this. And it's 1,020 square feet, obviously a small building, but they have an eclectic amount of items in there. And what we decided was most important, I almost hate to use the word museum because it seems like a dusty pile of things. Even today, with the interactive displays, people can come up with a variety of things like that. What was more important was the stories of the veterans and their families in the area. So our mission is basically to capture those stories, record them, make them available to students, families, other veterans, and people who we probably will never meet, but they'd like to get a better idea of the genealogy of those people in that area. And so it's based in the south side of Carmel at 108th and College, but we would like to have the stories from veterans, again, and their families, whether the veteran is still with us or not, um, so that we can make a repository of that. So that basically that's how it started at this point, and we're going on from there.
So now you've been involved as what, about 2 years now?
Yeah, a little over 2 years. I've known about that. I've been in the building ever since about 2012 when I moved into the county. And I had seen that. I did not meet any of the veterans at that time. There was probably some overlap, but 2012, 2013 seemed to be about it.
Okay. So now at this point you've got all the paperwork to make it an actual museum at this point. Is that correct?
Yes, we're established with the Secretary of State is a nonprofit here in Indiana. The IRS has given us the 501c3 status, but also 170, which I'd not heard of before. And there's several letters in parentheses after that. And that has to do with people who decide that they want to do some financial planning or estate planning and bequeath things to us, things like that. So at some point, we'll approach financial estate planners about that. So we're there, and that we found is a striking difference. So here's something we've discovered, and since you and I met, we started talking about this. The sign is very nice out front. It's a very professionally done sign, and people take it at face value. However, legally, there was never an entity that was created as a museum. Everybody regards it as a museum with its library. Jim's been in the building several times. However, as they were collecting the items, and they would have people just leave stuff on the front porch at times. Okay, so they didn't know everybody that came up, but it was being treated as a museum. Unfortunately, they didn't give what we've learned is called a deed of gift, which museums do, which is your receipt. And you can tell the museum, I'm going to donate it to you. I turn it over to you. Treat it kindly and carefully. Okay. Or I'll just want to loan it to you. So we have some items like that. So we were going to inventory everything in there anyway. As best we could, track down the families or the veterans themselves and say, if nothing else, my phrase, the band's getting back together. We're going to open up this time capsule. So what we're still faced with is we have to continue working on doing the inventory, but we're faced with the fact that we have to approach every single one, identify them, and if we can't find them, we're going to have to do what Indiana code lays out fairly clearly, a public notice saying these things are available, and ask if someone remembers that some items were donated or left there. Do they want them? We'll have to negotiate with them that we need them to be able to somehow prove that they did own it in the first place. And then because again, we're a legal organization and we're functioning as a museum, so we will give a deed of gift to that. Everybody who comes forward with that, and as the Indiana Code, which we're not experts on at all, but we've done a lot of good homework. We get to negotiate that. So there's no quick black or white answer. Yes, I claim that it's mine and I want it back. Or you can have it. Either way, we'll have a receipt for it. Again, they call it a deed of gift. Well, what about the kind of thing where, and museums go through this too, we're rummaging around in the back room, or we're, offsite storage. We find something. Process is called as found in collection. You have to go through that. You have to document we have it, and you could have to hold on to it up to 3 years, as a matter of fact. Again, the same thing. It's a public notice. We've not found anything yet where one of the categories is called abandoned loan. Okay, well, what? Because we would think, well, if you found it, nobody knew who gave it to you, it's abandoned, right? Not in the legal sense we've learned. So, example, what if we came across a document that says, I'm loaning this to you to the museum, and here's my contact information, and it could be several years old. Fine, but we haven't found that yet. We don't have anything in there that's clearly designated that way. However, we have been talking with the fellow by the name of Rick Pike, who is actually Marvin's grandson. Rick's on our board now, just recently, and he had personally probably moved, he says, 75-80% of the stuff into that building. He knows about it. So that's going to give us some greater information on where did some of this stuff come from. So anyway, he'll be a great help for us as far as that goes. So what we thought was going to be a process of trying to find who donated these things, because there are some items that have tags on them or labels of some kind. Okay. There's a little bit more to it now, because we're going to have to be able to go out on public notice and be able to do that. We are taking items in donation, but we've also acquired a number of things. So since you and I first talked last year, we have a small offsite storage place. It's fairly full now, though.
I can imagine.
Come into the museum and see it. We've reorganized a few things, but to do this well, especially focused on artifacts that local veterans, local as in anywhere within the border of the county, have where we can clearly identify it. One, before we accept the item, we want a story from somebody. We have to know that it's tied to a local veteran in some way. And more than that, where, for example, well, here's a document. We can give you some information, John, that says this person was a veteran. Okay, whether they're still alive or not, and we know that he brought that back from overseas. Just as an example, fine. Well, but what's his story? It's easy to place something on display and watch it gather dust, but that doesn't really. And it's obviously they're worn in a lot of cases, but a local person had this. They touched it. They may have worn it. Who knows? And if it's a World War II, Korea, Vietnam era, could have been Afghanistan. It could be an artifact they brought back from overseas. What? How did they get that? Those kind of things. So the whole idea is be able to learn that. So I'll say, and I use the word, put air quotes around it. There's a price if someone wants to donate something to us, which is it has to be affiliated with a veteran, and we want to hear that story. We'll be able to take that down and record it.
Well, if you need me to sign anything on that Korean Army jacket and those, I got what 3 or 4 tubs of
yes.
Civil War books, let me know. So we're glad to do that.
Right, exactly. We're going to do that. The other thing, so we'll make a plea here. Very important that we have good relations with other museums here in the state, and especially within 25, 50 miles of where you and I are sitting right now. So there's some out there, the Museum of 20th Century Warfare, for example, which is on the old Fort Harrison grounds. The War Memorials Commission downtown Indy. We've become to know the people up in Portland, Indiana, at the Museum of the Soldier. There's a museum out in Terre Haute. Okay, the idea is we can't take everything, but this history is too important. We don't want to see this basically die or go away in some forgotten closet. Okay,
right.
Forgotten room. So with those kind of things, we'd like to be able to inventory them ourselves, so we can give somebody a good description and say, here, is this something that would help your collection?
Yeah, I'll say if you don't know these people yet, you might want to pop by at 82nd and Allisonville, the Indiana Funeral Home there, Indiana Funeral Services, whatever it's called. They
Yep, we've
have
been there.
a tiny little, they have a nice room that is a
Yes,
museum,
yes,
military, and they've
yep.
done a really nice job with it. They do a good job honoring, and they've got, I don't remember what they call it, flag. It's this massive flag,
I've
and
seen it.
it's, huh? You
I've
see
seen
that?
it.
And they
I've been there.
folded up the parts that are damaged. Okay, but it's,
Yes,
yeah. So yeah,
it's very good. I was very impressed by that. One of our volunteers. So side story. I find myself, this is bursting up here with stories as we've come to talk with people.
right.
Woman, Navy veteran. She was a nurse in the Navy, and her husband. They met in the Navy, as a matter of fact, when they both were serving. Um, but she was a woman veteran who came to our recognition day, June 12th of last year, and she was one of half of the 10 or 12 women veterans who came that day who said, I had no idea that there was a national holiday for myself as a woman veteran. So she, for other reasons, had some kind of connection with that funeral home. So we ended up going over there, and I was able to meet the present owner. I think it's the grandson of the founders, but I've forgotten his name at the moment. But anyway, so we got to see that room and that flag up there. We also found that that's become the new home. Now it's at least a year old of the Indy Metro Honor Guard group, which is a group of all volunteers. It's about 25 people. I saw their president last year make a presentation at the World War II Roundtable. Um, they do travel more than just the central part of the state. They've traveled out of state a few times, all free of charge to families, but they work closely with Funeral Care of Indiana, and who will do free of charge, according to their present owner, some help with VA benefits and all to help the family, at least get started with something like that. And the Indy Honor Guard does over 600 of these per year. I was stunned when I heard that. And these are all volunteers. Most of them are senior men, and they do quite a good job. I'm very impressed with if someone has a chance to stop by to see them. It would be a great place for them to go. And at some point, when we get our website up, we'll want to have a link to that.
Yeah, I was like I said, I was very impressed with
Oh
what they
yeah,
have there. And be real frank with you, they are my drop off point when we do. What I do for a living is we do a lot of estate sales and clean outs and what have you. So I'm
right.
constantly finding a bunch of flags shoved in a thing in the garage, which freaks me out. Okay, so
Yes.
so I always take those. And right now, because that's about a mile from my house, that is where I
Ah,
take the flags to retire. They're closer than a VFW post to me. So,
yes.
yeah, and they have a tub there for those. So, yeah.
Yes. Well, here's something I learned. I saw the same thing. He made a specific point to me about that, though. Apparently, they're using a number of those flags to drape over a coffin when they cremate the veteran.
Oh, really?
Did not know that.
That
And he
still
said,
works.
well, yeah, he says, as you just described, he says, I get tubs of these things from people.
Yeah.
So what I first thought was just a drop-off place like you'd expect at a VFW or Legion post. No, they put it to good use. As a matter of fact, also there, um, did not realize this. They also are able to assist with burials at sea for veterans.
Well, I
They
wasn't aware of that.
well, in that room they have a framed uh, map with a mark on it that shows, and a plaque shows a veteran, and that's where he was buried. That was his, he was a local veteran from the area, but that's where he was buried at sea. And I had no clue that they were still doing that.
Right. That's excellent. Well, like I
Yep.
said, I take advantage of it because it's a great place for me because I'm
Oh,
constantly coming
sure.
into flags and I'm like trying to find a place to honor them. And that's to me, it's a convenient location to do.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. And talk about volume, because the kind of volume that you would come into as opposed to a family that discovers it in their attic, for example.
Yeah, well, when we just did last week, I took four flags out of there. So I mean, it's just it's kind of it's kind of what I do, So
That's great.
Mhm.
That's great. Well,
So,
go ahead.
well, I was going to say, what's going on now? I mean, you've gotten a lot of your groundwork done, so I know you're working on projects. I know one of your projects is trying to get the voices or the stories of these veterans on. Is it on
Yes.
tape? Is what it or
Yes.
recordings?
Yes. The key thrust for all of us is that one is an on roll, and that's my working title. We may come up with something else, but just picture a walnut plaque as a landing page on our website with small simulated brass plaque on it that gives the person's name, the branch they were in, and the years that they served. Okay, just something very basic. I mean, there's a number of veterans we've talked to, and our idea on that is this is just public recognition that they served. It's something that can be visited anytime. We're not don't with 14,000 living veterans in the county, let alone the numbers who are deceased, buried here, or affiliated in some way. We're not going to make a physical wall out of this, okay? But we want to be able to honor that service, and a number of veterans like that quiet recognition. Okay. Well, behind that, this is a website. We'll go to what we're calling a veterans profile, and that's where a recording would be. So since you and I have talked, we've interviewed a number of veterans, and unfortunately, in some cases, it's been an assisted living facility, and in at least a few cases, within some months, unfortunately, they passed away. Sorry to see that, but we were able to give their family a copy of that. We don't have the website up yet, but a copy on a USB drive of both the recording itself, which we don't touch at all. We just make a copy of it for a transcript, which is sometimes easier to go through. But it's in a lot of cases, we're finding that's the only time they could actually hear their veteran's voice again. Now, at that point, they're fairly old. Most of these people were well over 90 years old. So, but that seems to be very important. One of the things that we will eventually get on the website is we inherited, I think it's 82 cassette-based interviews that were done. Uh, they're over, as far as we can tell, they're over 20 years old. Most of them probably were done when Senator Richard Lugar's office made a push in 2002, 2003 to get around to veterans, record their voices. It seemed to be something that the congressional offices were doing across the country. And so it's now in the Veterans History Project in the Library of Congress. So we can hear the voices of the two founding veterans and several others just by going to that website and going to their collection. Well, when you look at it, it's sort of the same thing we want to be able to do. You want to hear, you know, Sergeant Bob Smith. Click on this. Whatever his family, his descendants are able to give us, we'll have photographs of that. If they have videos from their time, whatever, it doesn't matter, but capture the story, because unfortunately, so many people aren't hearing the stories. An example: this is since we last talked about it. Our treasurer used to be the Veteran Services officer in Hamilton County, worked out of the county seat in Noblesville. At a recent board meeting, she said, believe it or not, I had several widows come to me, either call me up, walk in the office, email us, who said, I just buried my husband. However, somebody during those proceedings said, you might be eligible for VA benefits. And they say that they were shocked. What do you mean? Well, how could that be? Because they never were told that their husband had served.
Wow.
No clue, absolutely no indication that they had served from their husband. Unfortunately, so I find myself telling the groups which we get a chance to talk to, guys, we're going to our graves and our families don't know what we did. And it's absolutely stunning. So we don't expect to change human nature. Veterans, especially men veterans, are reluctant to say a number of things. And often it's, I just did my job. Yes, there's no doubt about it. I'm a veteran, 22 years, went to Desert Storm at the end of my career. Okay. There's reluctance to describe a number of things. But it's interesting because in certain circumstances, they will talk a lot about it. We just interviewed a veteran who he'll be 101 in June, if I remember correctly. Lives in Noblesville, and he was a musician. As a matter of fact, the first time I met him, he visited the museum about 2 months ago after an Indy honor flight, and I had seen him there before. I hadn't met him. So I was in another part of the museum. You've been in there, and there's a bugle sitting on one of the display cases, and I was in a different room. Next thing, I hear that bugle being played reveille. I've never heard that. I've just seen it there. It's obviously an older instrument, right? Come to find out, he was a trumpeter and a bugler, as well as, and he did that officially in the army during World War II. He actually played in as in a regimental band that played in several places in the Philippines, the U.S., and in Europe towards the end of World War II and after. He was in the Philippines for like 8 months after the end of World War II. And that was one of the things which they did as part of a band. Anyway, so I was stunned. I'd never heard that before. So some other people came in and he was in with a couple of friends and he started talking about it. And I was able to capture on my phone him playing the bugle again. He says, I don't think I got quite the lip for it. This man is almost 101 years old. Okay. We then interviewed him a few weeks later, just within the last 2 weeks, and come to find out he's an avid watercolor painter. We saw several examples. He sits on his front porch, which is like a Florida room, and we interviewed him for 35, 40 minutes. Fascinating stuff. So again, we'll give him a copy of that, and we just so somebody knows. Um, let's take the interviews we've done and say an assisted living facility. Everything that they will be able to hear is whatever happens during the interview. An example: someone comes in from the staff and says, "Bob, are you going to go to lunch today?" So he says, "Yes, I'll be there in a few minutes. I'm with these people." That's all there. We're not going to edit anything out. That is too precious. The only thing we'll do, and I say lightly edited, it's easy to do with AI, is just identify the speakers during the written one. And AI is very good, but they make some mistakes. They may have two different paragraphs. It's really one conversation, minor stuff like that. But we will hand them that and other information. And we're hopefully, so an update for you is we're hopefully no more than a couple of months away from having a website.
Awesome.
So then we can be able to put those on there. And Rick Pike, the grandson of Marvin, is a musician in his own right. He's got a full studio in his basement, he told us, but he's also something of an audio engineer and does technical support for TV and radio stations here in the Indianapolis area. We mentioned these 82 cassette tapes. We were concerned, like, we need to have somebody sit there for, let's just say each one's an hour long. It's not like a Star Trek transformer where you can just put it in and snap your fingers. You've got an audio copy of that you can put on a USB drive or whatever, right? No, you have to listen to it in real time. He says, no problem. It was fabulous. Now, he hasn't had a chance to get to it at this point, but we can preserve those 82 interviews and he will help make sure that we get them up on the website properly. So this is fabulous information that we're getting here, and we're able to talk with people who have seen things that we didn't. And it's not, and veterans may be concerned. I don't want to tell you about certain things. Okay, that's fine. But especially the wives and daughters and granddaughters, the women of the family who I found are often the historians of our families. They're the guardians of the hearth and the stories, right? And I can hear the pain in their voice when they say, I can't hear my grandfather. As a matter of fact, it's just a family story. He was in World War II, or today he was in Vietnam, or he was in Korea. That's all I know. There's something inherently wrong about that. And so we're going to try to help with it.
Well, one of the things that I can tell you from my own diving into ancestry and all that kind of stuff, Something that hit me much harder than I ever would have dreamed. Okay. I mean, I did not, well, let me hang on a second, grab it here. I was able to find, first of all, I always grew up Irish Catholic, and I found out that I was actually from a Welsh Baptist, but, but anyway, um, one of my five times great grandfather wrote a book. He was in this big argument. Now, this is a reprint out of like India, but I'd love to have
Okay.
the original. The original is like in the Baptist museum somewhere.
Okay.
But he wrote this book because he was in a fight with Samuel Finley, who was the president of Princeton, and they were
Fair country.
arguing over paedo baptism. Okay.
Yep.
So my grandfather, being a Baptist, was not against it, and the other one was for it. And so they did a debate on the town square. Allegedly, from what I've read, is my grandfather kicked his butt, and so Finley didn't like that. So then he um, did an op-ed in the paper, to defend
Of
his.
course.
And
Of
so
course.
my great grandfather decided to up again and wrote a whole book about it, and it was printed in Ben Franklin's print shop. I was reading the
Wow.
book just because of the fact that, oh my God, I can do this, right?
Yes.
I anticipated it being boring, but it was so amazing because I felt like I was sitting down in a long conversation with my 200-year dead grandfather, you know,
Yes.
and
Yes.
that I had never heard of until a few years ago, right? And
Yes.
it was much more emotional. It was much more, I had no idea that it was going to impact me the way it did. So, what you're talking about is giving families these legacies.
Yes. And that's a credit to his writing style.
Well,
It was
I will tell you this, it did kind of make me laugh because there have been some people who have claimed that I'm hard headed and argumentative. And
not in
his
my limited experience.
Yeah, but his book was basically with a sledgehammer beating this thing to death very strongly. So I'm kind of like, well, that sounds familiar. But anyway, but um, but it was amazing to feel that connection
Yes.
to someone that's been dead since the 1700s.
Yes.
You know,
Yes. Yes. Talk about those connections. A couple of things. Um, a woman who lives in Fishers, as a matter of fact, called me up, and she had seen an interview. I'll tell you about it here later, um, where she said, "I've learned about your museum. My husband passed away several years ago, but I have a box of some items of his, and I just don't know what to do. But I want it to go to a good place." And then she proceeded to tell me that he had passed away about 15 years before. And it was interesting because when I listened closely as she was telling me this, she said, "Just now I'm beginning to deal with this. I could hear the pain in her voice with that." She said, and one of the things he has that thing that fits on top of the stick that you use to fly an airplane. Okay. Well, or why? Well, so without drawing it out, what she brought to us was a photograph that was a black and white photograph that shows a crashed airplane in a field, somewhat overgrown, just black and white, and it's framed. And the control handle from the top of the joystick of a plane, also an airspeed indicator, and one other gauge. Come to find out, and we did some research. Come to find out, he was in the Missouri Air National Guard flying an F-100, which had been a long time since I'd heard about that particular model. I saw some pictures on a training mission along with some other pilots over Camp Atterbury. He had to parachute, he had to eject because of problems with the plane. Another pilot had problems too, only he lost an arm when he ejected. Her husband was okay. In the box, also was his flight log, which is mostly checklist more than anything else. But then some other photographs and all. Come to find out, and if you look at the bottom of this black and white picture, kind of grainy, you see a shadow of someone standing there with the sun behind them taking a picture of that. Okay. Come to find out, that's we got information from the actual statements that he made for the accident report and other things. But she'd never seen some of those things. So that was actually the control handle from the joystick from that plane, which now is in our museum.
Wow.
Along with some other things that he's able to bring along. Like, wow. So there's no doubt. Now, he was, I think that he lived for a short time in the county, but I'm not positive of that. But anyway, she does. So she lives here now. So when I say, is a veteran affiliated, she didn't have to grow up in the county, but she lives here now.
Right.
And I think it's honorable and respectful to be able to tell that story, and we can show, somebody actually held that grip. But this is the story goes with it. This is a real story. So those are the kind of things we're finding that are very important.
Well, those are very cool. One thing I was sitting there thinking about, I'm going to send you an email here in a little bit with, as soon as I find it, but this guy named Sean Kunkel has this voices business where he basically provides families stories. He goes and interviews family members, and so they have these stories.
Good.
Well, I guarantee you he's got some veterans that maybe you guys can do some sharing. So I want to try to get you guys connected.
Thank you.
Another thing is, I don't know if you've talked to her or not, but Dr. Shirley Smith is part of the DAR here in the Indianapolis Caroline Harrison group.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And she and her group, they have identified where there's about a dozen that they know of where the grave sites are for Revolutionary War veterans. So they've got those stories. So anyway, if you haven't got those could possibly be in your library as well.
Thank you, appreciate that. And so what we're finding is, so our focus was these are two Korean War veterans that were the primarily movers of this thing that started. Well, I've learned that Indiana, according to a National Guard officer, I heard this from many years ago, it said probably and may still have the highest per capita volunteerism rate for the military of any state in the country. I'm trying to find some way to document that.
Yeah.
But I also heard from General Goodwin, who just recently is retired from the position, but he was the executive director of the Indiana War Memorials. Okay. And he talked with us in the museum. At one point he asked me, he said, did you know that 3 out of 4 eligible men during the Civil War in the state of Indiana served during the Civil War? I was, an Army reservist. It was 19 years before I left, and I left within less than 2 weeks from the time we were called up for Desert Storm. That left a big hole in some places. Same thing with all the people that deployed with me. Well, but 3 out of 4 people in this state at that time, males that had to leave. Wow. So anyway, a lot of volunteerism as far as that goes. So we want to be able to honor that. So I can't interview a Civil War veteran right now, but there's a lot of interest and there's a lot of information there. So the county was started in 1823. We just need information. Now, not too far from where I'm sitting, because I'm in the home place area, and the museum's only a few blocks away, there's a small church called the Pleasant Grove Church. There's the burial site, 2 graves of 2 soldiers from the War of 1812. And that's on a register from a group similar to the DAR, only this is the daughters of veterans of the War of 1812. And a member of the group came over. She's also a member of the DAR. We know Elaine Schulte, who's the state regent for the DAR. She's been there. And we've been able to meet Shirley Smith and some others from the 2 chapters that cover the county. As a matter of fact, they offered at one point to help us with our research for veterans. So my point on this is, just because the 2 people who started it go back to the Korean War, we we want to respect whatever's available. So when somebody comes forward and says, I've got this information, nobody after, let's just say the Mexican American War, okay, 1840s, right? Um, you have that information. Why wouldn't we take that in because it's part of the history for the county?
Right.
It's just important to be able to do that.
That's very cool. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I love what you're doing now. So what do you need from what are you looking? I mean, I'm sure you probably could use some help as far as volunteers and various things like that to try to you know get these cataloging things done or what
Right.
have you.
Right. So yes, we need volunteers who let's put it this way, if you can take a photograph and write reasonably legibly and follow a basic procedure, we need to be help to be able to catalog those things. This has become even more important. So an update here is just within the last week, the state legislature passed a bill which is going to Governor Braun's desk, which allows for the dissolution of township level governments. The building we're in is owned by Clay Township. Carmel and negotiations have stated publicly that they are able and willing to be able to take on the responsibilities of what the township can do. I'm not trying to get in the middle of any kind of political action as far as that goes, but we're faced with we don't know who the landlord for the property will be in 2 years because and this has been accomplished several times throughout the state ever since the Kernan Commission came out with a report in 2007. We've learned under Governor Daniels. So the township levels of government have been under some kind of stress from that, and not all townships by a scoring system they have are able to be absorbed by the largest town in their township as far as that goes. But in Carmel's case, the borders of the township are the same as Carmel, basically as far as that goes. So there's other things that impact on that. But we also, you could say that if we put out everything we have, we've outgrown the space that we
Your
have
facility, yeah.
without a doubt. And like any museum, we need some offsite storage so we can rotate display items through there as far as that goes. So we'll need to do our best to get that inventory done within the next 6 months to a year, hopefully by the end of this calendar year, as far as that goes. And we need to have people consider where else might we go to be able to I'll say set up shop. Website can live anywhere. We'll be using a company that's within the immediate area that'll be able to host that. We have someone who's working on developing the website itself as far as that goes. That part's obviously easy, but it's important to be able to come in and reach over and touch the uniform and know somebody wore that uniform. You've seen the museum. That's everything that's in there as far as it goes. Somebody donated, but it was worn by a veteran.
Right.
Okay. Variety of things like that. We need to be able to work that. We don't have any grants at this point. We need someone to basically do some research on grants we could be eligible for. We have some ideas from people that are coming in which is great, but we need someone to write those grants, let alone follow up that process. Okay, and we've learned that all the nonprofits in the county, and we go to regular meetings of the Hamilton County Executive Directors Group. It's been around for many years, and so we get to listen to those people every month. They need accountants. They need grant writers. Good grant writers are as scarce as hen's teeth in this area, unfortunately. So they're and I'm sure they're earning their money. So we need that kind of help. We need people who are willing to come in and help us staff the place so we can be open regularly. Okay. Without a number of people say, I'll tell you what, I can do a few hours for a day. We still have to figure out what would make the most sense to be open on a typical work week, let alone holidays. So we're doing our best to keep you up to date. We have a list of 15 holidays that we did last year. We're doing the same thing, the same holidays this year. And part of those are the service branch birthdays, for example. Good turnout on that. We need veterans to come out and help us figure out how do we want to celebrate a service branch birthday? How do we want to celebrate Veterans Day? What about July 4th? we don't have the typical call for volunteers. For example, we could do an Eagle project, for scouts, but we don't own the building. We just pay the utilities on it. That's our lease agreement as far as that goes. So yes, we could use a new coat of paint and some other things like that, but that's not quite the same thing because again, we don't own the building.
Right.
And now there's a deadline which is the 1st of January 2029 when whatever townships and their local cities and towns are going to work out an absorption routine. It's got to be completed by then. So the grant writers.
You have other priorities than paint.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So it's primarily let's account for this stuff so we can preserve it. People who want to talk to veterans and their families, because one of our specialty exhibits we want to have is the home fronts. Example, when I went to Saudi Arabia in the middle of December 1990, there was a home front in this country. When I say home front, it's not just World War II victory gardens and Rosie the Riveter and things like that. Okay. Some members of my unit, when we came back after Desert Storm, testified in front of a congressional committee where they were wondering what's the impact, because literally overnight, some of these people left their jobs, they sure left their families, okay, and in some cases they left their own businesses, lawyers, real estate people, people like that, okay. So we want to be able to have that and document that. So when someone says, well, I don't know that I necessarily want to talk to you, well, yeah, but you had a family. Those people were affected by this. Your grandchildren, there was some effect from your veteran service. Even if, you get down to the grandchild level and none of those people had been veterans at that point, but they still were affected by this. And these people are hardworking community leaders in a lot of cases. They're leaders in civic groups. Okay. So we also need people to, I'll say, be a good liaison or ambassador to other museums in the area. Also, like the Indiana Historical Society, someone who's interested in that. We have a woman who's a retired librarian, had worked out of Noblesville, and she's been excellent in going through that what's a somewhat small library in comparison, but there are tremendous gems in there. We want to be able to have people help us catalog that. We're also looking for people who are published authors, could be self-published, because we found there's at least 9 or 10 people in the area who have some are teachers, someone who's a fellow whose name is Ron May. He's a retired Navy Reserve chaplain, but he's the full-time chaplain for Hoosier Village in Zionsville. I think he's up to his 4th volume. He's working on a 5th book now. Okay, these are recollections. We'd like to have authors come out of the woodwork, tell us about yourself, and we'd like to be able to have an author's corner and have events where they can, if you want to sell your books, let's get together and talk about those things and be able to have events like that. So that, and of course, we humbly need donations. We're all, we're basically self-financed from that standpoint. And we've talked before, picture an iceberg. What they see when they can walk in the door, that's above the water line. The way to have this repository is going to be on the website, but we have to catalog that. And then we have to have people who are interested in, let's go out and interview the veterans, interview the families. Let's talk to them. Let's catalog that stuff when it comes back. And then let's pay attention to that record, because they're real people. Their lives will be changing. They'll discover things. Okay. We also we've learned that not only there are 14,000 living veterans in the county, there's 4,000 who are in grave sites here. We haven't found yet. So you and I started talking almost 2 years ago. I don't think there's a single place in the county where a grandchild in a junior high in the county could just go to a single place and type in the name of their veteran because they've learned from the family, well, grandpa was World War II. Okay, he's now passed away, but is he buried in the county? There's a number of places they can go to, find a grave and others. Information is not always that accurate, but there's no simple way. And there's 55 cemeteries in the county, we've learned. Shirley Smith was part of the cemetery commission. There are 6 or 7 veterans posts. We'd want to be able to have them find that information.
Well, some of this stuff is when you get start digging for that stuff, it's not necessarily all that easy. It's a little bit of puzzles and figuring out things, and
Right,
a little bit of
right.
Nicolas Cage stuff as you're trying to figure these things out.
Yes, yes. It's
My two
there's no
times
there's
great.
no I mean, there's no doubt it's detective work.
Well, it's like my two times great grandfather is buried down in Lagodi, and he was in the 80th Volunteer Infantry for the Union. Okay, he was
Yep,
involved in some of the most horrific battles. Okay, because
yep,
I know when he was mustered in, I know when he was mustered out, and I know what happened during that time. I don't know much about him. Okay,
right,
as far as I know where he was during these windows of
right.
time, but I did find his gravesite. It took some doing
Wow.
because I went down to Martin County, went to their health department, found the death certificates, and the death certificate's wrong.
Yep.
Okay, it
Not
has
uncommon.
it has him in one place and whatever, and I did find his gravesite, and I got a chance to clean it. Okay, but it was
Yep.
not where I thought it was. It was, but I was able to find it. Um, but I did find it, and then my grandfather, his son, okay, my great grandfather fought in the Spanish American War in the Philippines and all that kind of
Okay.
stuff. I know his rank. I know, that. Know nothing beyond that as far as what he
Right.
did during that time frame. I know where his grave. I've not been to his grave, but I know where it is up in Noblesville. So.
Okay. One of there was a fellow who was over 30 years in the Air Force Reserve at Fort Grissom. He came in, I think it was the second time he visited us, and he had some photographs from his father during World War II. He also had what was obviously a photocopy of a typewritten list, about 3.5, 4 pages, dates and locations. And come to find out, it was it was an anti-aircraft unit that his father was in. And he said, there's a person who was a relative of the family who had an old map of Italy. What we tried to do is sit down and looking at this listing, try to plot on the map where his unit went. In some cases, there were daily movements as the war progressed. Okay. What we've been able to do, and this is where the benefits of AI can be of help. So I need a volunteer because we have the template for this now, where we can be able to produce using Google Maps as a base. Okay. So now we can do this for any veteran that has a chronology like that. We'll be able to produce maps that show where that unit was on those dates. And simply because I'm sure those records came out of whatever journal from the unit there was. There's historical journals from some, especially from World War II and beyond. Okay, but we want to be able to print that out and present it to him, and also make that part of his father's profile. And
That's very cool. I know that how I know what I know about my two times great grandfather is the 80th Volunteer has a great website that's got lots of information on it
yes,
someone had built.
yes,
Yeah.
yep. And there's been an awful lot of work documenting Civil War era uh, battles and all, but you're especially someone who's very involved in the history of things. There's so many holes in that
Yeah.
too. Well, we're just because we're eager volunteers, we're not going to be able to wave any kind of magic wand, but it's fundamentally people are interested when someone from their family has been in the military somewhere, especially when, well, I can't turn around and ask them. They're not here.
Right.
That action was 150 years ago. Okay. Well, there's professional quality researchers out there. And believe it or not, someone may not think about this, but they're in the DAR. They're in other organized groups like that. There's librarians who love to do this stuff. This is important. Another thing goes along with that. For example, there's a group called the foundation called the Quilts of Valor. Okay, that is a group that was started by a woman whose son was in the service, and the according to the background, pictured a soldier in the Middle East, American soldier, and in her dream, darkness around him, It was obviously, in a combat zone, those kind of things. But then the healing power of a homemade quilt, handmade quilt. Okay. She saw it, the dream pictured it coming around him. That was 2003 when that was started. They've given away now free to the veterans, and their concept is touched by war in some way. Okay. Over 400,000 quilts.
Wow.
There are 12,000 quilters in their organization nationwide. We've linked up with a woman who's a representative, lived in Noblesville for the county. We have an example of this in the museum since you've been in there last, and we've had 3 presentations to veterans within the museum. All someone has to do is get the information to go to the website, nominate that. We have to have information about the veteran. Okay. And a real key thing is it has to have their permission to be given that quilt. I say that because not long after the woman started this organization, there was a veteran that was well diagnosed with PTSD. Unfortunately, he had a bad reaction to just being gifted with this. I can only understand the horror that somebody went through. It. We didn't expect that. This is just something to try to offer some kind of healing to someone. Okay. Right. So you can't just drop it on them. Okay. So with keeping that in mind, that seems to be a powerful thing to do. And there are families that would like to be able to do something for that veteran. They're not awarded posthumously. They have to be given to a living veteran. And they're not the only group out there doing that as far as that goes. But it makes a lot of sense, and they make beautiful quilts. We've seen examples of it, including the 3 that were given out in our case. So there's a variety of things that we can do. So we've obviously made some progress, but we definitely need help.
Well, that's very cool. I mean, I love, and like I said, I think of, what little I know of my, 2 times great grandfather that was in the Civil War. I know nothing really about his life other than during those times. I mean, I know when he was born, I know when he died, I know
Sure.
where, but the story.
Sure.
And the irony is I have, in fact, this cousin has passed. She's older than I, and she told me a story that she had heard from my great grandmother about her father-in-law, right?
Yep.
And my great grandmother died when I was 2, so I have very little memory of her either. So this one was old enough that she heard stories. And apparently, the one story that she remembered that was my great grandfather would come home so drunk that the only way he got home was his mule would get him home. Well, when I look back at the battles that he was in, he was under Burnside, then he was under Grant, then he was under Sherman. So he was under some of the most horrific battles. He was in wilderness.
Yes.
He was the one. He marched into Atlanta. So he was out in the Carolinas. So he saw some stuff, and
yes.
he wasn't carrying PTSD. That doesn't surprise me at all that he was.
Oh yeah.
So.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Someone may say, just pick the veteran. They don't really want to talk about it. And I heard this guy on Jim's broadcast. He wants to be able to put that story on the website so other people can hear it. My veteran doesn't want to do that. We'll be glad to help them sit down and just get the story for you.
Yeah.
You don't have to do it to broadcast out here. So we're going to have a toolbox in a way. You want to do that, we can help you with that. Out in Fisher's launch, there's a person we met. Her company does creates memoirs based on what people have to be able to say. So just a few days ago, she and I are trying this out. We had a free webinar for our workshop, rather, up to a couple of hours. We had 5 veterans in there, and they, with the prompts that she's been able to develop, they may now go farther than that. She obviously has a business to do this. She wants to be able, she's very professional work, but she also works with veterans. And that's the kind of thing we can offer. So someone says, well, I'm not quite sure where to start. There's nothing more terrifying than a blank page.
Right.
Okay. Let alone, what if I sit down at a keyboard? It's a blank page sitting on the monitor in front of me. Same idea. Okay. We can help with that. The Veterans History Project, there's a process to go through with that, but you can go through that. They have a field kit. We need a volunteer to be able to pay attention to what that process is so a family can come in. What would I do? I like the fact you've got a local museum, you got a website, that's nice, but I'd like to have this done at the Veterans History Project. Why not? So we want to be a resource for people. My sense of things after now for the couple of years we've known each other is somehow be able to get the story for you and your family.
Yeah. I mean, I would kill to have, these ones I'm just telling you about that I have some online information that I have been able to read about,
Right.
but I don't get to hear from them. I don't get to hear what they saw or what their
Yes.
processes were. And the fact that I got a chance to read my five times great grandfather, who's been dead since the
Yes.
1700s, that tells me just how powerful that is, and it's like,
Yes.
and I don't think unless you've experienced it, you really even understand how powerful it is.
No. No, I agree. I
Mm-hmm.
agree. It's a humbling experience, especially someone who we think they write well. Somebody else may not, but if when we're reading those words, and it doesn't matter what form, it could be a formal book like that, it could be just a letter that you come
Right.
across. If it seems to be more real for us, how do we make that for the next person and the next one? That's what we're trying to do, and it's unbelievably powerful.
Well, it is very important, and I think that you're doing great work. So I'm very excited about it.
Thank you.
Well, I can't believe it. We're done already, but basically, I will get your contact information on this video so that people can find you, okay,
Sure.
and get things done. Your phone number and email, I'll put them both on there. Is that all right?
Yes, please. Please.
Okay.
That's the only way to do it now. And for those who want to come in, they'll not have regular operating hours except for those 15 holidays, which you'll get a list of. Just contact me. Well,
Well,
we can get you in there.
that's great. Well, John, thanks for coming on and giving us this update. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Jim. Good luck.
All right, talk to you later. Bye
All
bye.
right.